This is Tobias from Glass Ocean, and you're listening to the Progcast.
Welcome back to the Progcast. I'm your host Dario, and this is episode 75. And as you have heard already, today we have Tobias from Glass Ocean here on this show. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm also very good. Thank you very much. We like to start our shows with a little section that we call What's in Your Walkman? That means we're asking our guests to tell us a little bit what they've been listening to lately, some favorite songs that kept popping up in their playlist. So is there anything you can think of right now that you've been listening to lately?
It's probably the worst time to ask that question. It's going to be a very revealing answer. I've been listening to lately, actually, it's going to sound really funny. Mario 64. There's a track on there called Jolly Rogers Bay, and there's a 10-hour version of it on YouTube. And I've been listening to that a lot lately because while I'm at work, it's like really peaceful. So I've been listening to that. What else have I been listening to?
Maybe
a bit of Gershwin.
Yeah, sorry, maybe something we can put into the playlist because we compile some playlists that are accompanying the shows because we don't have the music on the show itself. And there, of course, we're going to put some Glass Ocean, but we also will put these recommendations.
Oh, cool. Okay. I mean, anyone that's played Nintendo 64 will, once they hear that music, they'll be like, oh, yep, back to my childhood. Yeah, otherwise, I've been listening to a lot of Gershwin piano works. There's one in particular that I'm obsessed with. Let me have a quick squiz in my library. It's called Shall We Dance?
Okay.
That's a bit of a random recommendation, but that's been buzzing around my head at the moment. I've also been listening to this country kid in the States who just has this really funny little voice, and he's obviously got a big team of American producers behind him souping up the music. But he was famous for yodeling in a Walmart or something like that. And then they pulled him off the street and they put him into the studio, and he's written this. His name's Mason Ramsey. And there's a song called Lovesick Blues, which is this where he's kind of doing his yodeling and singing at the same time. It's just, there's something really comical about the track, and it kind of makes me happy.
Okay, fair enough. That sounds
Yeah.
sounds like a lot of fun. Yeah, cool. I've been listening to a lot of music as always as well. And for this week, my recommendations would be from an upcoming EP of Norwegian legend Ihsahn, the cover version of Aha's Manhattan Skyline featuring Einar from Leprous. That's just so sick. I love
Cool.
it. And the EP drops this very Friday, September 11th. And another thing I've been listening to the last days was the debut release of a German progressive metal project called Intercepting Pattern, which is very much jazz metal, which is really cool.
Okay.
But I found their one single was a little bit misleading because it was like the first half of the song was only, like this constant heavy chugging and screaming like Meshuggah, and then you only had the jazz and awesome solos in the second part. So I'm gonna check and put some other song in there that has more of that jazz that makes it exciting.
Yeah.
So these would be my two recommendations for the week, and now we're gonna dive into Glass Ocean. I mean, you guys just put out your debut full-length album, The Remnants of Losing Yourself in Someone Else. Beautiful title.
Thank
Um,
you.
on August 21st. And yeah, as I said, it's your debut full length album, but you guys been around for a couple of years already. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about the history and the origin of this project, and yeah, what you've been up to up until the release of The Remnants of Losing Yourself and Someone Else.
Yeah, it started in 2013, just as a studio project with my best mate, Nic Pettersen, who's, for those into sort of progressive metalcore, he's in the band Northlane, drums for Northlane. Him and me have always written music together since high school, so I wrote sort of heavier stuff pretty much all the way up until then, and I wanted to write something that was a bit, I don't know, a bit more me. I always loved heavy music, but I wanted to write something that was more like what I grew up with, sort of more modern, like 90s rock, like In Excess, grunge, stuff like that. Yeah, it was a studio project pretty much for 3 years. We did our first EP in 2014. We followed it up in 2015, started touring, got a band together. And then, yeah, we played Australia quite a bit, and we stopped touring for a bit, and we went, okay, let's do a full length. And it took us 5 years to write a full length, which I guess is not that uncommon, but it was more a byproduct of writing so many songs and not liking the material and not feeling the material was honest to the band at that place and time. And once we'd written basically a second album that we were happy with, we got everything together. And then last year was all about, getting all the different assets together for a release and doing the videos and getting the artwork and all that stuff, which sometimes can take a bit longer than you really want it to. And yeah, here we are.
Yeah, all right. Before we talk about the album in depth, you just mentioned the first two EPs from 2014 and 15, respectively. Now that we're kind of talking about them, are there any particular tracks from these two EPs that you would like to have included in the playlist to sort of document the history or the discography as a best of Glass Ocean?
Yeah, I think the track 7, I believe, on the first EP, it's called Adelante. I think your listeners will dig that track. It's actually a homage to Tolkien and the island of Numenor.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the story of which there's actually a part 2, which is not really that obvious to when you look at the track names of the debut album, but the last track is basically a part 2 to that track. And yeah, I guess I would say that track, and then off the second EP, there's a song called Voice of Fire,
Yeah.
which is sort of like a campfire kind of prog pop song.
Yeah, cool. Now you just mentioned like this campfire prog pop song, whatever. I wanted to ask because, of course, the first time I heard the song from Glass Ocean, I believe it must have been the first single for the new album, that was Beyond Us, and yeah, it's different. It's something like a mix I've never heard before in this, in this way. Obviously, very poppy, and what struck me the most was that, and I didn't really like it at first, I have to admit, was that most of the prog bands, modern prog bands nowadays, if they take in influences from pop music, like in most of the cases they take 80s influences, and they are like the odd ones out that have like some 90s influences actually, like Port Noir, for example. And they have this Beastie Boys flair. I don't know, but with you guys, especially with the new album, I had the feeling that you are actually also drawing from contemporary pop, which is completely uncommon in prog music. So yeah, how would you describe your style? Is there any genre description that you would be happy with, or how would you describe the Glass Ocean music to people who have never heard anything from you?
It's I've always kind of struggled a little bit myself trying to sort of say it was more this or the other. It's funny. My default answer for that is I just call it a rock band, and people hate that answer. It doesn't describe anything, and that's kind of why I like giving that answer. But to be specific and not silly about it, I it's funny because the modern pop thing is definitely something that has found its way in, and I think just that I think it's more about the structure. I think that we take from that pop formula that kind of seemed to creep out of the early 90s, late 90s with like Michael Jackson and people like that. And then even though the sounds change, the structure is really just like it's A B bridge chorus, and we've really stuck to that way of writing for a while, and there's not really many songs on that record that kind of break out of that. So I think that's where that modern pop feel might come from. But I feel like it's sort of embedded in a 90s structure, although it doesn't sound like 90s. It probably does sound more modern.
Definitely. So for me, especially the melodies and your vocals and your timbre and the way you the way you write or the way you sing the melodies, you like embed the melodies in the groove, these kind of things, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yep, absolutely. Beyond Us was it was a funny one to start off with because we had like a big debate about whether we should make it a single because it starts off in, I think it's a 7/8 bar length in the first bit, and it's really kind of, it hits you pretty weird at first, and then by the second verse you start to roll into it. But it does, and I think it's sort of it applies to a lot of our music. It takes a while for it to set in, and then you either sort of love it or you hate it. But it was never intended to instantly gratify, and that's something that's been really interesting. Hearing the feedback when people listen to it, they go, "It hit my ear weird, but I'm starting to like it. I'm starting to enjoy it." And it's really.
Which one are you talking about now?
Beyond Us.
Beyond Us. Okay. I think the second single was Voyage then, and that caught my eye a little bit more because of that elaborate video you guys were shooting with Adrian from Caligula's Horse, obviously. But yeah, the moment I was kind of starting to get into the groove was the third single, Bolero, which was even more poppy, and I was like, this got something like really thick and sugary melodies that like once they crept inside you, they're not letting you go. And yeah, I'm honest. I'm like I'm a more or less old school prog rock, prog metal. I don't know, everything prog, and I'm not that much or at all into a lot of the modern pop stuff, and I was like kind of surprised that I started to like it, especially with this track that went even further into that kind of style. So that was, I don't know, kind of surprising that in the end I did fall for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, and that's kind of the feedback we've been getting. They've been like, what the fuck is this? I don't know if I like it." And then some people have started gravitating towards those kinds of tracks more and more. It's quite interesting, and I don't really know uh, where that comes from. I think it is that just that mix of modern pop and prog sort of colliding in a certain way.
Yeah, I mean, so would be the progressive pop label be something you feel comfortable with?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Sort of prog pop rock. If there's such a thing, I think there definitely is. Yeah, I think that's definitely something that we aspire to.
Yeah, I mean, when I would, I mean, of course, the instrumentation is rock. You got guitars and like uh, classic rhythm section. It's all there, but I have the feeling if I would label it progressive rock, that like this, it there's nothing Marillion or Genesis in there, if you know what I mean.
Yes,
So,
yeah,
so
yeah, yeah,
I think it would be a little bit misleading.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, when you think progressive rock, it's not this kind of style or the kind of brush that yeah, as you said, with like Genesis and stuff like that, it's not doesn't really sit in that area. It's kind of it leans more towards the pop side.
Yeah, but still, what makes it proggy is the like yeah, the rhythms and the guitar layers and all these intricate stuff. There was actually one band that one band only I could think of that did something a bit similar, and they're from Poland. They're called Disperse, and
Disperse.
their last album, Forward, was released on Season of Mist in 2017. I don't know what they're up to right now because their main songwriter and guitarist, Jakub Zitecki, he left the band, and so I don't know if they're still around or not. Uh, Actually, Jakub himself, he released a solo album last year, I think, and even though he's like a super guitar prodigy, there was not a lot of guitar on it, if I remember correctly. So it was very
Okay.
modern and very poppy. So these would be the only comparison I could uh, really give people in the prog scene to you guys. So
Cool.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I'm so glad to hear that because like we want to come over and play with bands like that. We want to. That's who we want to go tour with. You know, we don't really fit. We're with the prog label and we have we're from the prog scene in Australia, but we have a bit of a hard time trying to fit with the right bands on the right bill because they're either heavier or kind of a little bit more alternative to us or something like that. So, yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah, I think Disperse would be a great match, definitely. Um, but yeah, you just mentioned you're coming from the prog scene in Australia, and you played the what's it called, Prog Fest,
Yeah,
um,
Progfest.
last year and stuff, and there's also heavier bands on there, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, how does it translate to an audience who is like yeah, like a prog metal audience? How?
It's it took them because we've toured enough now in the scene to be a familiar face. So it kind of like when you listen to Beyond Us for the first time. At first, people were like, "I don't I don't fucking understand this. It's not heavy. It's not like not heavy." But after a while, I think especially like Caligula's audience
Yeah.
seem to appreciate us more and more, which is really great. Because they've got such a great following here, and the shows we have played with them, it's always time and time again we get a good reaction from the crowd, which is great. And they know what to expect now too. They know that we're not going to come out and just go boo and just turn it up, it's going to get a little bit emotional, and it's going to get a little bit, a little bit like, I don't know. It's yeah, but it's good to see that we're getting some good support here.
Yeah. I mean, Caligula's Horse audience should be expecting to be getting emotional during the show anyway. So
Absolutely, yeah, yeah,
with the
yeah. That's
headliner.
good. Yeah. But
um,
I mean, they're like, it's like they're riding on horses or something, like, and I mean that in the best way possible. Like they have that, like, even though they're not Nordic or anything, they have that kind of ancient vibe about their music, and and then we sort of play before them sometimes, and it's like, we look like we've come out of, I don't know, some floral 90s video clip or something like that. It's quite the opposite side of the coin, but yeah, it's good that they're enjoying it.
it's yeah, still fits somehow in a weird
Yeah.
way. But I could imagine that even though you're not aiming for that, a lot of times I found this to be true with bands that sound quite mellow on record, that the live show is automatically a good tad heavier
Yeah,
from
yeah,
the feel
absolutely.
here, from the feel. Yeah, just
Yeah,
feels heavier when you have the live drums and yeah, the live energy and everything. Yeah, I mean, it's been a while since every band on this planet has been playing concerts, I guess. Well, here in Germany, we were just starting again with smaller concerts, and or yeah, smaller bands playing bigger venues that are, of course, reduced the capacity to a fraction of what it would normally hold. How has been things in Australia for you guys during this weird time?
yeah, that's great to hear about Germany. I mean, I'm starting to hear things are starting to open up over there, which is great. Here we were making good progress, and then just like New Zealand, things started to come back again, and infections started to rise, and we've had to
Mm.
lock down, Victoria, and all bets are off on touring plans and things like that. So it sucks, and there's no way to plan for anything, and our states are kind of not at war with each other with their guidelines and their restrictions, but they're at opposing ends, and so it's difficult to really plot a future so far. So all we've been doing is just moving our dates further and further forward, and just hoping, that by that time things are opening up again. Yeah,
Yeah, I guess there's not much more you can do because it's so unpredictable, right?
yeah. It's tough. The only thing we can kind of do is make, content, and keep writing, and rehearsing, and playing as consistently as we can. Unfortunately, two of our members are from Melbourne, from a different state, so I haven't seen them since the beginning of the year, which is just, it sucks. But yeah. So we'll have to, I don't know, start Skype rehearsals or something like that.
Yeah, coming back to the album, I've read in the press info that it was supposed to become a concept album, but then didn't. So what happened?
Yeah, we wanted to write something a little bit more grandiose, something that was more like track by track. This is what we're doing. We're going to define what it is that we're doing, and then go after it. And we wrote tracks, and we just kept feeling that, like, it was forcing a false narrative about the band and about where we were in that place and time. And after we'd written, like, basically a full album worth of material that we didn't like, we decided to go back to the drawing board and just start fresh, and we wrote a collection of songs that were kind of like the other side of the coin that we were originally writing. And that original coin was kind of trying to be filled with like hope and love and light and dreams and a little bit it wasn't based on reality. And at the time, there was a lot going on in my personal life and in our band and the band's personal lives, and we're like, fuck it, let's write something a little bit darker and a little bit like more messed up and crooked and so we just got all these songs off our chest. And when we look back on it, we realized that we were like trying to like bleed out some bad blood that was kind of inside us that needed to be let out so we could feel healthy again. And that's where the name The Remnants of Losing Yourself and Someone Else came from, because the remnants are the songs themselves, and the trials and tribulations that we went through as individuals and together. And that's what it ended up coming out. So it ended up sort of like a concept album anyway, but a little bit more kind of
like a thematic concept, not like
thematic,
like a story, like a classic storytelling thing.
Yeah, and which doesn't really have an ending either. It kind of leaves the last track leaves everything pretty open in the air as to whether, if you could pull out a character from the narrative, you don't. The character may not have learnt their lesson yet, and that was pretty close to what happened as well. So
okay,
yeah. So I'm keen to keep writing about that and keep following through with that. I think, and I think that's going to keep going on to the next album.
Wow, cool. So how did the songwriting go about with Nic actually leaving the band but still writing songs with you? So were the songs written mostly by the two of you, or did the rest of the band also have something to say?
Yeah. It's generally me and Nic sort of laid down the groundwork, and then Curtis, our guitarist, came through and laid a lot of sort of individual guitar tracks down, solos, a few sections, and our drummer works really well with Nic, and there was tracks where Pat wrote the drums and tracks where Nic wrote the drums, and then in the studio we had both of them there together, and they just collaborated on everything and came up with stuff on the fly. And it was cool to have, because on the previous records it was pretty much just me and Nic, and it was good to have another guitarist there, and then like two drummers basically, which was kind of unique and interesting. And it was a great process. It was really fun.
Awesome. Yeah, and you mentioned you're also already looking forward to or looking into writing new and more stuff. One more thing I would like to talk about would be the artwork of the album, because it's a little bit of a change of style from the EPs. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about the artist and the collaboration with the artist who did that artwork for the album. And I would assume maybe was the same one who did the Beyond Us and Voyage artworks, or was that a different one?
That was the guy. There were two different artists. The guy that did the single artwork, he's a really good mate of ours, who does a lot of the tour posters. He does all the merch, and unfortunately, it was just a timing thing. We sort of ran out of time to do individual artworks for the singles from the artist that did the album artwork. But still, he fits the style so well, and it's great. It's a great testament to him that it does fit quite well with the album artwork, because he was able to match the style really well. But the album artwork itself we wanted to get an Art Deco artist, and it's it's a pain in the butt trying to find an Art Deco artist, a modern Art Deco artist. It's like they don't exist. So, and we found Jason after what must have felt like 4 months of scouring the web and talking to people, and he's one of these guys that works for like quite big companies. He does stuff for like Coke and things like that, and
Oh wow.
we're going, oh, this is not going to work out. Like he's going to cost an arm and a leg, and he's not going to have time, and this and that, and luckily he had time, and it didn't cost an arm and a leg, and it turned out exactly how he wanted, and he's fantastic. He was just so amazing to work with, and his style is just it's so unique to himself. I haven't really seen anyone else do a modern Art Deco spin, which is kind of what he's got going on in the artwork there. Yeah, yeah, and the artwork itself is what it's meant to represent. Is you've got this sort of futuristic city, and something that I'm fascinated with is symbolism. And in the foreground, you've got this big statue, and you've got a man on one side and a woman on the other side, and they're holding up what they're supposed to be holding up is the light, and they're reaching up together, and there's a bit of a trinity going on between those two, and then where their hands are. But then at the top, and so that's something I'm really obsessed with, things like the Holy Trinity and how that factors into geometry and symbolism in life and whatnot, and then at the very top there's an image of there's two people at the very top, and it's kind of ambiguous as to what they're doing. They could be dancing, they could be singing, they could be hugging, they could be arguing, they could be just talking, and the whole point of putting them up there was that you've got this structure that you're adhering to, and it's you might think it's perfect, but then what's being held up above you and me and subject and object is maybe something that isn't what you want. It's not holy. It's not just. It's not right. And so there's like a duality at the top that's butting heads, and that's basically what the album is. It's like it's a conversation between these two forces, and they're holding up something between themselves, and they might be holding up something that's not exactly sacred. It might be drenched in lust or in remorse or trauma or malevolence or something like that. And that was the whole thing for me with the album. I was like, we're trying to create this structure, but there's something integrally wrong with the structure, and that's why we put those two people up there.
Wow, that was very, very interesting insight there. Looking at the 4 single artworks, funnily enough, I would say that looking at the artworks for Beyond Us and Voyage, I definitely can match them with the respective videos from the visual look, and the same is the case for the other two, Bolero and Almeida. The two videos feature only you in Bolero with this black and white aesthetic, and in Almeida it's more colorful. So was that on purpose, that to match the single covers with the videos?
Yeah, we wanted to set a theme before the videos came out, so it would prepare people for like the palette that they were going to experience when they watched the visuals. Yeah, we wanted to, and it was great because the Thrashwolf, the designer of the single artwork, he just he'd seen all the videos, he knew us really well, so he matched that aesthetic really quite well, which was great.
Awesome. And all 4 videos were directed by Adrian, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. No, Adrian's the man. We had him. Yeah, he's our guy for anything visual.
Yeah, that's awesome. They do look really slick, just fitting the music.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for taking your time, Tobias. It was really nice getting some insights into the world of Glass Ocean and the remnants of losing yourself and someone else. I hope at some point down the line, next year or in 2 years, who knows, you guys will be able to tour again and maybe even Europe.
Yeah, yep, absolutely, absolutely.
But until then, yeah, we will have we at least we have the music to keep us company. So in that sense, thank you again. Thank you to our listeners for listening, and take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, and listen to great music.
Beautiful. Thank you, Dario, so much. It's awesome.
The Progcast is a production of Stuis Media and is recorded at the Moonbase Studios in Munich. It is produced by Randy M. Salo, Janine Stengel-Lewis, Blake Lewis, Kai Metzner, and Dario Albrecht. Our theme music is by This Is Not an Elephant.